So, Victor, having said all that, absolutely fascinating. What do you make of Christopher Nolan's newly directed
It
Odyssey?
was almost 3 hours. I made the mistake of going to IMAX. It said, "Be there at 3." It didn't start till almost 4. I think I saw 24 forthcoming ads, and then I got out at 7, so it was 3 hours long. Put I don't know how to say this, but it was an extravaganza, spectacular movie, but it was not the Odyssey. It was something else. It's kind of like Dunkirk, if anybody saw that. There were brilliant scenes about the ships coming across to pick up the stranded soldiers at Dunkirk. And then that flyer who they rescue and he kills somebody and that tragedy. And then they get in the, you remember the scene in Dunkirk where they're in that hull of an iron ship and they get bullets? That's kind of, he uses the same thing when he does the horse. So what I'm getting at is his style in Batman, even in Inception and Dunkirk, is not to give you an idea of what's going on. He could have he could have early had a bard saying this Odysseus did this and this, and but he never does that. It's episodic, and so you can watch Dunkirk and you would have no idea what's going on. There's rescuing some people, but there's no. You could have had a Navy guy saying, putting out a map and say, "Here's the problem. Here's the Third Panzer Division, or here's Guderian, and here's Rommel, and here's we, and then and here's what we're trying to do." It doesn't happen that way, and you don't get a sense of when the battle is cresting or ebbing or who's winning. But they're brilliant little scenes, and that's what the Odyssey. I was going to go through some of them. He has a lot of insertions, and he has a lot of omissions. I don't understand that, why you would omit key scenes that would be relevant to a movie maker and then insert your own take, which detracts from the narrative. Give you an example. He omitted when they're in the Cyclops scene. And by the way, the Cyclops is really scary, but he doesn't look like Cyclops. We have vase paintings of him as a big Greek with a beard and, and he looks like other Greeks. If anybody's seen the 1955 version called Ulysses, made in Italy by Kirk Douglas, with Kirk Douglas starring, Anthony Quinn as Antinous, the evil suitor. Uh, that was a really big Greek, monstrous person. Polyphemus, the Cyclops, can talk well. So he talks back and forth. It's really scary. And he said, "Aren't you going to respect guest friendship?" He said, "Yeah, I'll eat you last." And so it's an ongoing, and they get him drunk, and they do that. They have elements of that, pointing his eye out, but they don't really get him drunk in that. Actually, the Kirk Douglas movie was better, where they all have to stomp the oil, the grapes, and make wine and get him drunk. But key to that whole thing is how smart Odysseus is. So then he said, "Who did this to my eye? Who are you?" And he said, "I'm." In Greek, he would say, "Ego eimi outis." Well, outis is the word for nobody. So he knows that there's a bunch of wandering cyclops. So in the poem, "Polyphemus, dear Cyclops, who did this to you?" "Outis, outis, outis." "Nobody? Okay, we can't help you." That's all lost. He doesn't say that at all. So that was a mistake. And then the shape of him, he looks like a naked Rodin statue. He really does. I mean, he's got this weird eye that's sideways. It's not just like a normal eye. And then he's completely naked and he's kind of imposing and he can't talk. They say, well, he can talk, but he never really talks much. He should be a very conversant monster. So I don't know why he omitted something key to the story that shows you how wily and brilliant Odysseus is. And then he puts all this extraneous material in. Another thing he does, he got a lot of flack for having Lupita de Longo. She is a African Mexican actress. I think she grew up in Mexico, but she has tripart citizenship, British, American, Mexican. And Helen, we know not all the characters are described how they look, but she is described of fair arms, lovely, and you all of the adjectives that she's described of, and as you would expect, she's on base painting, she's white. Okay, so Christopher Nolan thinks, I want to be kind of edgy and contemporaneous, and maybe some people have suggested there's no evidence that maybe I want to make sure that when the awards come out, the left wing woke award winning Oscar committee sees that I'm woke too. So he takes her, a black actress, and he makes her as Helen. Helen has a tiny little part. Telemachus, when his father hasn't come home and the suitors want to kill him, he's kind of, I don't know what I should do. I'll go down and talk to Menelaus in Sparta. And Menelaus, when the Greeks sack Troy, they get Helen. They don't kill her. They bring her back, and she remarries. She's back with her husband Menelaus, kind of a zero. But what's interesting is he makes her the twin of Clytemnestra. So there's a flashback. The same actress plays Clytemnestra. But Clytemnestra is not in the Odyssey whatsoever. And the reason that Agamemnon was killed when he got home by Clytemnestra, his treacherous, unfaithful, adulterous, promiscuous wife, is because she thinks Agamemnon is a dud, and she's been fooling around with his cousin Aegisthus, who's really a awful guy. So she wants to go out with another guy, so she kills her husband as soon as he comes. The Iphigenia story is a later addition in the 5th, 6th century BC. But he makes that the whole thing, and then I think the reason that he made Clytemnestra is the sister of Helen, but they're not identical. So I think what he did is I'm going to put a black character in a role that's not central to the thing, so the purist won't get angry at me because it won't alter the dramatic narrative, but it will satisfy the woke crowd. But she's only got about 5 lines, so I'll have a flashback and make her 2 characters. That's been done before. I remember in Ulysses, the Italian actress that played Penelope also played, I think, Circe as well. So that was something. Another couple of things that were really I really, bothered in there hi hi there's doublets in Homer, so the oral poet can probably only handles a certain number of characters in his brain, so he often does doublets. There's Menelaus, the imitation of Agamemnon, or there's Patroclus, the imitation of Achilles, but they're often described somewhat in the same way. So he has 2 islands. The last one is Calypso, the magic nymph that seduces him and keeps him there for 7 years. And she's played by the Australian actress, blonde. But even
I
she,
I think that's Charlize Theron.
yes,
Yeah.
Theron, she's pretty good, but she doesn't say much. And you don't see her island, just the beach. And supposedly, I guess he does have memory loss, but that's from lotus eating, the lotus eaters. And then when he gets to the Phaeacians, he's in traumatic, he's been washed up. But in this, he's kind of like he doesn't know where he is. But in the poem, he cries every night after a certain point. But the other doublet, Circe, she's also an immortal, but she's a witch, sorceress. It's pretty good, the scene about turning them into pigs. I thought he did a great job with that. But when you and then the tigers and the leopards, that's in the poem that she's got a magical, but in the poem, she's beautiful. And that's why it's so scary because they go to her little hut in the forest and she's not just screaming in middle age, like in her almost 60 as she is she's stunning. And that she's like Calypso. So you don't get in this one because they've taken a middle-aged actor about 55 or 56 who may have been beautiful when she's young, but like all people age, it's hard to see why he would be attracted to her. So he's not. But that's part of the key that he's able to resist her charms